This is the 26th consecutive year that Rochester Hills has been designated as a Tree City, USA. In order for a city to receive this annual designation from the National Arbor Day Foundation, it must achieve 4 standards. It must have a community tree board or a forestry department. It must have a community tree ordinance. It must have a community forestry program with an annual budget. And it must have an annual Arbor Day observation and proclamation. And that's what we're doing here today. Presiding over the ceremony today is Mayor Brian Barnett. The tree that we're planting is a Valley Forge elm. It's Dutch elm disease resistant, American elm, Ulmus americana. And the location is pretty close to an elm tree that grew here in the years that Sarah Van Hoosen Jones lived in the farmhouse. And she wrote that she would often look out her bedroom window at this elm, often, maybe daily. And her favorite time to view this tree was in the winter time when there was snow on the ground in full moon. Now I'm going to ask how many of you this is your first Arbor Day tree planting that you've attended in Rochester Hills? A lot of first-time people. How many have been here for 2 or more tree plantings in Rochester Hills? Congratulations, you're heading in the right direction. The first Arbor Day was in April of 1988 at Spencer Park. Was there anybody here on that first Arbor Day in Rochester Hills in 1988? One person, Alan Buckenmeyer, Parks Operations Manager. And he's a little bit less hairy now than he was then, but he's still kind of hairy. We're going to give him an Arbor Day hat, a Tree City USA hat from the National Arbor Day Foundation. Alan, thank you for your support of tree planting in the parks and throughout the city throughout your career. Thanks, Alan. At this point, I'm going to turn over to Mayor Barnett when he's going to read the Arbor Day proclamation and say a few words to us. We're going to plant the tree, and at the end of the tree planting, we're going to pose for a group photograph. Eric says we can do this. This photograph is important because it's what I will send to the National Arbor Day Foundation next year for a Tree City USA status next year. Mayor Barnett.
Good afternoon, everyone. I always look forward to this day, partly because I'm a huge fan of Jerry Lee, and this is like his Super Bowl. Arbor Day, when you're the forestry manager, this is the culmination, right? So I want to thank our forestry team who are here. Dave, I don't know if I saw anybody else from our forestry team here, but we're really blessed in the city of Rochester Hills to not only have a great resource in the trees, and we'll celebrate that a little bit today, but we also have some great people with many, many years of service whose job it is each and every day. You don't think about it, you drive by, you enjoy it. It's not till you get out of our community and you're in a community that doesn't have the type of trees and the type of benefit that we enjoy here that you realize how grateful we should be for the blessings that we have. And so thank you to Jerry, Dave, and the entire team. We really appreciate what you guys do. It was funny, I had to add further color to that story. I had the mayor of Westland up with me recently, and we were driving around and we're talking about the differences in the communities, and I had spent some time with him in Westland earlier, and he said the biggest difference, Mayor, is you have way more trees than we have in Westland. And I never really stopped to think about it, but as you drive around, it was pretty unique to notice, and it was something that we certainly don't want to take for granted. But we stop each and every year around this time of year to celebrate trees and to celebrate what they provide. And this year is especially poignant for me because of who we're dedicating this tree to, and whose honor this tree will be planted in their memory. Trees in general, of course, are important for a variety of reasons, but when you plant a special tree, I think it's important to note all the benefits that a tree really provides, right? So a tree, and not perhaps this one, but the trees that are around us on this property certainly have a great story to tell. They were planted in time by a person who had maybe a vision, maybe they didn't, maybe they just wanted some shade. But certainly the benefit of that tree has lasted much longer than the individual thought. It provides refuge, it provides inspiration, it provides sustenance for so many people. And I think today about the person that we're honoring, Sue Thomasson, and how her life really was very much the same. I was blessed to know Sue, and I see Sue's family here in the first couple rows. And for those of you who knew her, what an amazing person, whose life was much like a tree. Lived, created, and blessed many people whose lives she touched along her short life. But now, after she's passed, her influence is still felt. Her impact, the life that she lived, is lived out not only in her children, but by so many people in this community who still run into me and talk to me about the impact that Sue had on their lives. And it's true for me. She was an amazing person. She cared more about the community, more about this museum, more about the school district, more about others than she ever did about herself. It was never about what could you do to help Sue. It was always, what's the next event, and where do you need help, and what can I do? And to me, that is what I honor today, and what I hope we all honor today, is someone whose impact, whose legacy, whose shadow will live on much longer in a community than the time that this particular tree was planted, but will cast a long shadow on the lives of people who play in this yard, of the pumpkin festival, which I know is important to her, and as this tree continues to grow and will provide so many memories, the backdrop of so many pictures, her legacy will continue on in this community, as I know it will continue on in my life. So we honor her today, and we'll talk a little bit more. Pat, I'm sure, will mention a few more things about Sue and her legacy. But today we do honor, in the planting of this tree, National Arbor Day. And I'll read this proclamation. It's signed by myself, and of course joined today by several members of our city council. And I always want to recognize them because they are truly part of the reason that our city has been successful. I see Councilman Jim Kubasina and Councilwoman Susan Boyer over here. Please recognize them if you would, please. And also, in reading this proclamation, not only do I want to thank the forestry team, but I also want to thank our parks team as well. We're standing in a beautiful part of our city. Again, another area that we never want to take for granted, something that we truly are blessed in. And this area is under the wonderful guidance and loving hands of Mr. Pat McKay, who's, there he is over there. Everybody knows Pat. Every day Pat decides not to run for mayor is a good day for me. And also Ken Elwert, our Parks and Forestry Director, is here. Ken, thank you for being here. And Alan, his right hand. Thank you guys and ladies for the great job you do. I see many members of our museum team are here as well. This proclamation reads, in honor of National Arbor Day, April 29th, 2016, whereas the citizens of Rochester Hills value the trees and woodland resources that enhance our city's beauty, and whereas the annual celebration of Arbor Day provides an opportunity for individuals and communities nationwide to recognize that viable, healthy community trees serve many positive purposes, and whereas trees purify air, produce oxygen, conserve soil and water by reducing stormwater runoff, reduce heat and cooling costs for our buildings, moderate air temperature, and provide food and shelter to wildlife, and whereas trees enhance the economic vitality of business areas, they add beauty to our neighborhoods and city, and are a renewable resource providing us with paper and wood for many useful purposes. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Brian Barnett, Mayor of the City of Rochester Hills, hereby proclaim Friday, April 29th as National Arbor Day here in the City of Rochester Hills. And be it further resolved that I encourage all residents to celebrate National Arbor Day by planting trees to enjoy the beauty and pleasure they provide. Signed and sealed. Ladies and gentlemen, Pat McKay.
Good. Thank you very much for letting me come up here. And this is a chance for me, too, to do a little shout out for our forestry division. Because I just look around our yard. For years, our efforts have always been the houses and the buildings that we have. And as those projects finally got done and the buildings were stabilized and we could take an 1840s farmhouse and ensure that it was going to last for a long time, we started looking at our landscape and tried to recreate it back to the way it was when the family arrived here 190 years ago. The white pine was planted during the Michigan Sesquicentennial in 1987 as a 6-foot white pine tree. You can see what happens when time is on your side. The Norway spruce, also recreated a Norway spruce when the part of the Van Hoosen farmhouse stood up in the front yard. We have another elm tree in our hedge of trees over there that we replaced that also was affected by the Dutch elm disease. And the family talked extensively about the landscape on the property. And And so I didn't want anyone to take for granted the tree that we have here. And so I'm going to talk about it. And this is a writing Jerry mentioned briefly about Sarah Van Hoosen Jones talking. Her bedroom with the upstairs 2 bedrooms over the front porch. And in her book called The Chronicle of the Van Hoosen Centenary Farm, this is what she wrote about. In front of the house and a little to one side on the right, as one stands at the southeast gate, was the very large old elm tree with its spreading branches. It was and still is the main feature among the other trees and shrubs. In the summer, it casts a wide and thick shade under which picnicking could take place. In the fall, it is the least appealing, as its leaves do not color, but rather turn brown in unison and dry to a crispness. In the winter, the form of the old tree casts a beautiful image of itself on the moonlit snow. Many and many a night I have gazed at this scene, since the elm is widely visible from my bedroom window. I particularly love the lacy effect of the budding branches displayed in the spring. They are a deep mahogany red, plump at first, then elongated until they turn into tiny green leaves. So this was just a little bit more than just a regular old tree for the family. The next paragraph, she goes and starts describing every stone in the stone wall right next to us. So it shows us how important this tree was, and especially because we're recognizing Sue Thomasson, who's really one of our longtime employees at the museum. We have a couple staff that are come up and tell stories about Sue. So here's my story. At one point, Sue had moved in to what we call the oldest house in Oakland County. It's right here on Tinkin Road, 999. We all know the address. Built in 1827. It would have been one of the very first houses built with wood that was cut from a sawmill that would have just opened in Stony Creek Village. So it's a remarkable structure. She hadn't quite moved in yet, so the building was wide open. Kind of what I would call a party house, a building that was available to have a large gathering of people. So we decided that we were going to celebrate Abraham Lincoln's birthday there in February. So we were going to shuttle people from here over to the house, and Sue agreed to have her house as part of it. The one thing that our guests did not know is that they were going to have to put on a fake beard and a stovepipe hat, and we had to make them out of cardboard. And it was the hardest presentation I've ever made, to look out on a crowd of people with a fake beard and a fake stovepipe hat. But I think we packed about 125 people inside that house, and all had a great chance to be in certainly one of the oldest houses in Oakland County. It came as no surprise that Sue Thomasson generously, provided the house so that we could do another event to benefit the Rochester Hills Museum. So we have lots of those stories. Most of them we can repeat. The rest of them are just strictly museum stories, and we'll keep them with that. At this point, I'm going to introduce Patrick Endress, who's going to tell, you got a story for Sue? Come on up. You're going to tell your story too. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I had the very good fortune to work with Sue almost every wedding and every reception, and the one thing that whenever I think about Sue, and every time I see a pug dog, I think of Sue. And so I told her and my former coworker Danielle, those were the 2 women that actually made me love pugs. Up to that point, I had no opinion about them. I could care less. But every time I see a pug now, it's because of Sue and Danielle. And we had a tradition where if any of us saw a pug, we'd send it to Sue and whoever else. So whenever I see pugs now, I still think of Sue, and so I miss her every day. And even this afternoon setting up the chairs, I had a moment where I felt Sue and how she used to always watch over the museum staff and make sure every event was perfect. And I know she's probably looking over us right now and enjoying how we're using our land and planting a tree. So that's my story. I'd like to introduce Michelle Dunham.
I can stand on my tippy toes. Ginger Kettleson, please. Yeah, Ginger Kettleson.
I got to know Sue first when this lovely young lady, Lauren, was 8 years old in my 3rd grade. And Sue was one of the room mothers, and she and Kathy Moore, who's here today as well, we just worked so well together and had so much fun. And we did a lot of history things. We brought the kids out to Stony Creek Historic School. That was the big highlight of the 3rd grade year at that time. And one of the very sweet things that Sue and Kathy did was to plant a couple of apple trees, apples for the teacher, to say thank you to me for that year that the girls had. And it was planted in the schoolyard. That touched me deeply. I really, really appreciated that. The other way I knew Sue was later. I became very interested in the Cass Community Center and found out that Sue had been a volunteer there down in Detroit for a long time and had become very involved in putting on the breakfast that's on our parade morning, Christmas parade morning at the Royal Park. If you're not aware of it, you should be. It's a really great event, and it raises funds for this wonderful work that they do in Detroit. So those are two of my highlight memories. And then, of course, because I'm a volunteer at the museum and was on staff at one time, I'd be in and out, and Sue and I would reminisce and enjoy our thoughts about the times that we spent together. She's missed by many, many people, and hopefully her legacy will go on and on. Okay, Michelle Dunham.
It was such a pleasure to call Sue my friend and a member of our museum family. She is deeply missed. We all know it was family, it was community, it was the school district. We also know that Sue was very, very humble. And one thing that many of you don't know is how instrumental she was with all the young couples, the brides and the grooms, who chose to start their family history here at the museum. And they love Sue. And I know she got many, many notes. I didn't get to read them all because, again, she was a very humble woman. I'd like to share this one with you. Dear Sue and Van Hoosen staff, thank you so much for your patience and your kindness during the Cade Sparks wedding extravaganza. You were also accommodating and eager to flex with us. That was Sue. She loved her brides. I hate the fact that we were so high maintenance. She never complained. That's not who we are typically. She knew that. The grounds were beautiful, the new barn perfect. It suited our needs beautifully. Sue, gosh, you were so calm and easygoing through it all. I pray your daughter's wedding is filled with joy and ease. Thank you, friend. Fondly, Tim and Lori Sparks. And I think that says it all. That was Sue. And now we're going to plant this tree in honor of Sue, in memory of Sue. So I'd like to invite the family up here to help us plant the tree.
Redid the calf barn behind us. It was a big community effort to raise the money, and we didn't know how well it would be accepted. We had some initial plans when we started raising the money, and what we realized is that people loved getting married in the calf barn. It was a huge phenomenon, and we ended up getting booked months and months ahead. And I think when Sue was brought on, we didn't really tell her how many weddings that she would have. And then I think we did more than most places around us. I think we were near the top in weddings performed. And, you know, if you've ever dealt with, and I don't want to say this, be careful when I say this, but if you've dealt with a lot of brides, you know, that takes an incredible amount of patience. We never had a single complaint. Sometimes, I remember one particular day we had a celebrity get married in the barn, and Sue said, "Why don't you come out? You're going to like the band." And so we came out, and it was Diamond Rio was the band. It was, you remember Patrick? It was one of the Seattle Mariners that got married. And so she allowed me to crash the wedding with her. And we sat in the back. We didn't drink, But we just listened to the band. We both like country music, and we listened to the band, and we sort of crashed the wedding for about an hour and a half until it was time to go. But it was always fun with Sue. She was always up for anything, and she loved this property like it was her own. And so it's, I think, a perfect tribute to be able to honor her perpetually here as she can continue to watch over it from now on. Jerry?
I got to add to that story. So Diamond Rio came from Nashville. It was a famous, country band that came up, and they needed, the drummer forgot his chair. And so they needed one of our spiral spinning chairs at the front desk. And Sue said, "You can borrow my chair if I can tour your bus." And that was the deal that she worked out. So she's the only one of our museum staff who got to tour the Diamond Rio bus. And it was the coolest looking bus I think I've ever seen. So Jerry, with that.
A couple more things. We're going to put a tree hugger plaque on the elm, designated as our official Arbor Day tree for 2016. And there is a second tree hugger plaque coming to dedicate the tree also to Sue. Also, we have 100 seedlings here, 100 white spruce seedlings. They're very high quality seedlings. Everybody can have one. If you take two, you have to promise to plant it. You can't just take it and set it aside somewhere. So, also remember to think of Sue when you plant it.